welcome everyone to the latest edition of the Next Big Pod. I've lost track of the numbers, but I'm here with Ainsley, Brian, who's just joined us from the shower. I don't know if that'll be allowed to be broadcast. Can we cut his video off? Fuck's sake. Also, we're here with Paul, who insisted that Brian was in the shower when the filming took place. Sam and Alex as well. Hi, guys.
I'm not here. I'll be here in about 10 minutes, but...
Oh, are you dropping off for a bit?
Yeah, so bye. Have fun.
Bye, mate. Right, so I thought we could start off with the obvious news, and we'll go to the biggest fan first of all, I think. Paul, Anthony Joshua confirmed fight for the IBF title on April the 9th. Thoughts?
I think it was in the last couple of weeks. I think that was the fight that seemed the most obvious. It was obvious behind the scenes that Hearn had seemed quite chuffed that he was getting in a position.
Oh, sorry, Paul. Muted you by accident, mate. I was trying to mute Brian. Sorry, this is a terrible start. I don't know how to unmute you. I don't know how to do this. I've muted everyone apart from myself. I promise this was an accident.
You just unmute yourself.
Paul, unmute yourself, mate.
Right.
I'm really sorry.
Right. Okay.
Keep going.
You just missed like 30 seconds of great analysis there, mate. Yeah, no, I think the last couple of weeks it seemed to be the fight that was most likely to happen. You got lots of people saying about other potential names in the pot, but I think once the Martin fight was made available, or it was at least made clear to Hearn that that was possible to do, it was an obvious one to go for. It's not the real world title at that weight, we all know that, but I mean, considering that we were looking at a potential, Derek Chisora fight or something along those lines, I think it's a much better fight. I think a lot has been talked about the sort of the learning element. Is Joshua ready for a world title shot yet? But it's seldom that these kind of belts, these sort of opportunities are just handed to you like this, at any weight, let alone heavyweight. He's got an opportunity to fight potentially, and it is potentially because we don't know enough about Charles Martin, but one of the weakest heavyweight champions in a long time. He gets to fight him at home. They've managed to bring him over here, which is something that Hearn's been heavily criticised in the past for not doing enough. And Joshua opens as heavy favourite, and I think he should win the fight, but it's a risk. He's fighting a southpaw who's a bit of an unknown quantity, and obviously they've taken the fight, not necessarily to cash him out, but they've taken it because they think they're going to win.
What was that, Brian?
He's absolutely shit. All you need to do is watch Charles Martin's fights to understand his shite.
The thing is, though, he's only had
3 fights online that you can see.
Yeah, exactly. He's had two. Well, he's had one televised fight in America, and then there are a couple of bits on YouTube, like smashing Tom Dallas to pieces. I mean, I think, like I said, that's why I'm saying it's an unknown quantity because we don't know enough about him. Is he good? I don't know. Was he better than Glaskov, an injured Glaskov? Yes, he was. But he is a bit of an unknown. But he's
White. Who would we pick, Dillian White versus Charles Martin, based on what we've seen?
I'd reckon.
Right. Okay, that's a stupid answer because you don't know enough about.
Yeah, you can't say that to anybody. Like, so we just don't. He's one of those. You don't know enough about him. If you were comparing it to like Wilder or Fury or Klitschko, or even the Povetkins of the world, people that we've seen fight numerous times, we've got a much better idea of. So in that sense, it's a risk. But on the other sense, if he's not all that great, and it's not like we've been hearing for months and months about this Charles Martin guy who's coming through the ranks, and you got to watch out for him in the heavyweight division. He sort of come out of nowhere. He only really got in that position because of what Kathy Duva did to force that situation, and then her guy went and lost. So
I had him until very recently. I had him in the bracket with like the Brazils and the Mansours, kind of PBC, almost like glorified club fighter level heavyweights. I never expected him to get. I mean, I heard the name. I'd never seen him fight. It's just a sort of NABO level,
Yeah, I mean, I think it's also a testament to the IBF rankings of how crap they are. So if Joshua does take the fight, Joshua taking the fight, if Joshua does win the fight, then he's got the opportunity to sort of dine out on a pretty ropey-looking top 15. And like I said, you can't knock him on this one. You can knock the hype and what they're going to say about this fight, as in that Joshua's the heavyweight champion in the world. He's a heavyweight belt holder, but he won't be the heavyweight world champion. That's Tyson Fury. So, and he's picking the easiest out of the 3 champions.
I've been watching very closely so far, and they've been pretty good about using the phrase "a world championship," and they haven't said the world championship yet. But I'm sure that will change in the coming weeks.
Yeah, but did they not? Apparently, Sky said something about Joshua fighting for a title quicker than Ali did.
Yeah, I think I've seen a few fans say that as well. But I was thinking about that earlier, and whilst it's whilst it's good that Joshua is being at world title level inside 16 fights or whatever. That's impressive no matter what. But at the same time, you look at the eras that people and like what was Tyson when he fought for the world title? He was like 15 or 16, wasn't he? But the era was 10 times stronger than it is now. So like the amount of people you had to get through to get to that level wasn't a comparison at all. But still, I think it's impressive that Joshua gets there and hasn't had to resort to the Wilder nonsense, being 35-0 before you even fight anyone who's even a journeyman, fighting club fighters for your first 40 fights. He hasn't done that. And I think, to be honest, Hearn could have probably got away with that. So on some level, he has to be praised. But also, by the same token, I was trying to think earlier, in the next 18 months, 2 years, can you possibly ever see a situation in which there's a weaker world champion that Joshua can fight?
Only unless
I can't see any other circumstance that will be in this.
The only way it could happen is if Wilder beats Povetkin and then he carries on his bum tour and gets beat by one of them guys. So free knockout shit.
But if he beats Povetkin, then I doubt he would lose to one of the bum guys, right?
Yeah, he's not going to lose. If he beats Povetkin, he's not going to lose to a fucking Brazil, is he?
No, you wouldn't think so, but you never know. He might get clocked and get knocked out.
It's heavyweight boxing. That happens to anyone.
Yeah, unless there's some like Lewis Rackman like fluke result, but you can't count on that. And I think Hearn knows that chances are there will never be an easy, because if it goes down, if he turns this down and then you're 2 years down the line, even the casuals will be saying, right, why isn't he fighting for a title yet? And Hearn won't be able to get, there won't be an opportunity like this again.
The only thing that I want to come out of this is that if he does win, that no one refers to him as a prospect anymore. And if he does get offered a unification with Fury, they go, oh no, he's not ready. He's a world champion, so he's ready. Simple as that.
Yeah,
you can't use that as an excuse anymore.
There was a really good quote on that subject about a year ago. It was one of the HBO guys who said, after Wilder won the title against Stiverne, he said in the aftermath, Deontay Wilder is what happens when there are so many belts in the sport, it's possible to be a prospect and a world champion at the same time. And he's right in a sense, but I agree with you. It's horrible that they can get away with that. It's so dishonest. Like, it's the most mendacious backhanded thing you can possibly do in the sport, to claim that the guy is the best in the world, but simultaneously needs to have lesser opponents because he's, still developing. It's just nonsense.
it's sort of what some people have said about Lomachenko though, because he won the belt so early. They said he sort of had the fights that he would have had beforehand, so he sort of.
Well, no, I think Lomachenko was a case of he needed to learn the pro game, which I think is a completely different argument.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Whereas Joshua I don't think Joshua, he was a good amateur, but he didn't have like an amateur style. Do you know what I mean? He's like a big punching, massive guy. His style is perfect for the pros. And if anything, it would be tougher for him. Joshua, as he is now, I think would have a tougher time.
Yeah, but I think whoever wins between Joshua and Martin are ultimately going to be judged off the next 2 or 3 fights. I think even from Martin's perspective, it's like, oh yeah, well, some people are like, oh, I've got to give him credit for going and fighting Joshua, but then again, he's only had 15 fights, so it's not exactly like he's gone for the toughest option, really, has he?
Well, I'm not sure. I think Martin could have had a very easy defence from the States, but
he
it would have been for a quarter of as much money.
So, I think Martin's done it because he's got a touch of what Tim Bradley had after he beat Manny. He's got a bit of a backlash, and I think he wants to show that he's actually going to be a world champion. He's a decent fighter, not he's got it because someone tore an ACL.
You think so?
Like for example, Tim, he didn't need to take that Provodnikov fight and go to war, did he? Didn't need to do that at all. He did it against all logic and reason.
Provodnikov was viewed as a very safe opponent, Friday Night Fights level, basic opponent, not expected to do very much. And
I suppose.
Bradley had just been on, he'd been headlining an HBO pay-per-view, etc. No one knows who Martin is. Do you know what I mean? Like, he might stop us, but no one knows who he is.
You can go in that angle with Martin, but you could also say he actually possibly knows himself he's not that good, and he's just taking the biggest part he can get. Because he's
I,
going to
I think there's more of an argument Martin is learning than there is Joshua is learning. Like Martin looks, he's very, like you could see, he's very raw and still developing.
I think I said it yesterday. I don't know if it's just me, but he doesn't look comfortable when he's throwing a jab. I don't know if it's just he's got a weird style, but it just looks weird. I don't know what it is. I can't put my finger on it, but
He's just got a lazy style, hasn't he? It's just the way he stands, the way he moves.
It's like when he's jabbed, it's like it's so forced. He can't just throw it. It's like it's not a natural sort of jab. It's I don't know. But I think if you look at them in the fight, if Joshua does use his jab at any point, he should make short work of him. But depends if he does.
I think it's. By the way, your signal is appalling, Paul. I don't know where you are. Are you in a basement or something? But you're all over the place. Sounds like.
His jab isn't as good as Adam Johnson's. I can tell you that.
Oh.
Right, what we're saying for Johnson? Innocent? I think he's been framed, personally. No?
Luke, Antonio Tarver has come to Adam Johnson's defence because Lou DiBella framed Johnson as well.
Yeah. Kanye West will tweet that Johnson's innocent in a few days, probably.
Lou DiBella allegedly framed Chet Evans.
Brian, I've got a question for you.
Right.
If Joshua versus Martin, if they put a solid or a good sort of 8 out of 10 undercard, is that pay-per-view worthy?
No.
Still not, even though it's a heavyweight title fight.
It doesn't matter if it's a heavyweight title fight. No fight's pay-per-view. But even...
Well, I think there's an argument, mate, that there's no way they could have got Martin over without pay-per-view money. Do you know what I mean? I don't think regular Sky would have had enough money to pay that sort of a purse.
Well, that's up to the fucking spastics to pay it. But I'll certainly not be saying it.
But the amount that they're getting in on the ticket money and all the other bullshit they can get to go along with it, all the sponsors, all the smug shit, they could have paid his purse with that. So that's a bit.
Well, maybe they could have done, but I think if he's getting $3 million, whatever, what's that, 1.8 million pounds or something, and that's a hell of a lot of money for a regular Sky purse. You know, that's crazy money. That's like what was the one Bute against Froch? Didn't he get like 1.5 million or something?
Oh, was that on pay-per-view?
No, that was regular Sky. That was like the best regular Sky card ever. And then Eddie realised he didn't need to be paying these guys so much money without pay-per-view. What do we think of Joshua's first defence? Dillian White Regal.
Nah.
Then Chisora. Then maybe the Rogan rematch in Ireland. Joshua on top.
I think he'll. Is it not Parker v Takam? Was it got to fight the winner?
Well, he's highly ranked, but I don't know if they'd enforce it. You know, I'm sure they're more than happy to take some money to step aside.
But I'd like to see him fight Parker just because I think Parker's a bit of a prick, and I'd like to see him get beat.
Is he ranked by the IBF?
Yes, he is. Takam and Parker are now the next two, but the thing with Parker is he's #1 with the WBL, so it's sort of he might decide to go that way because Takam probably beat Parker, to be fair.
You know what I think Hearn's dream scenario would be? If Joshua wins the title, is able to kind of tread water for about a year before he gets a mandatory, and during that time David Hay is somehow able to get some nonsense regular belt or an interim belt or some shit, and then he can do the huge unification whatever fight. I think that's Hearn's dream. He'd much rather do that than Fury.
Well, I read yesterday, someone shared something on Twitter that Hayes apparently fighting some regional WBC trinket next.
If he wants to make Joshua unified, I'm sure King Kong would come over, give him the money.
He'll be going after Fury for money.
For the regular WBA.
I don't know why you lot love him so much. He got done for drugs.
Fucking brilliant.
Got done for drugs like a year ago. You're such fucking hypocrites. You cried about Margarito for a decade, and now you're praising a guy who was on steroids this time last year. It's ridiculous.
Well, at least he didn't have loaded gloves.
Okay, I won't shit on him too much. As far as I know, he's doing VADA now, but I just think the hypocrisy is pretty funny because I can see Ortiz is becoming really, really popular with the hardcore fans.
I don't really. I don't care about Margarita. It doesn't bother me. If I cared about everyone on drugs, I wouldn't follow the sport. They're all
Margarita came back and smashed Nick Blackwell, you would be absolutely raging.
Well, I would not be happy about that.
You'd be throwing around allegations all over the place, steroids in his hand, bricks, and all this nonsense.
If Margarito could do 6 rounds against Blackwell without his eye falling out, he deserves a win.
He's fighting in, I think, about 2 weeks.
Yeah, that's going to be... His eye does look a mess.
Yeah, it does, I think.
Even the photoshopped version, it still looks a mess.
He's got no peripheral vision in that eye, basically. The doctors said that. And I don't think it's going to have improved in the 3 years since he fought last. It's ridiculous. I don't think he'll ever get licensed in the States again. I'd be amazed if he did. But good luck to him. He deserves to
I don't mind him.
regain his pound status. Has anyone else got anything else to say on Joshua before we move on?
Yeah, to be fair, overall, I don't think it would be that bad if the belt wasn't there. Because I think if you look at it, obviously, Martin is probably an increase in the level of competition he's been having. If the belt wasn't attached to it, I don't think it would get as much hassle.
I think it'll be his best win if he wins.
Yeah.
Probably. Just about. I think it's pretty close with Dillian White, isn't it?
Yeah, it's... Again, I suppose he's a bit of an unknown quantity, Martin, but...
As long as the competition keeps going up, I don't really have a problem with it. Even if it goes up slowly, as long as it keeps improving.
Yeah.
That's why I was so opposed to the Chisora fight, because I think that's totally a step back from Dillian White. I think Dillian White easily beats the Chisora of 2016, and I think it's the step backs that while the price of the ticket goes up that bother me. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. This is the thing. So I think his first 2 defences, if he wins it, because he'll probably get 2 fights in this year.
Oh, at least, yeah.
So, they'll probably spell out how things will go. So, because I think Martin got told he had 12 months before he had to do a mandatory, so that'd mean January of next year. So, I wouldn't be surprised to see Joshua out like July, and maybe October sort of time.
Yeah, a couple more pay-per-views. Especially if there's not much else going on in the second half of the year from America and stuff. Sky can get a couple more domestic pay-per-views in, can't they?
Yeah.
Or if you've got Fury Klitschko over the summer, maybe Joshua would come back in sort of autumn and then again at Christmas.
But they might try and be clever with the dates though this summer because of football. So you might see Joshua very early August.
Paul, got a question for you. Paul, press pass.
Yeah, okay. I'm waiting.
I will be. Let's set a line on the total amount of pay-per-views for Sky customers this year. I think it could be as high as sort of 9 or 10.
What? I don't get the question.
Think about all the potential pay-per-views that could.
Oh, how many pay-per-views? Right, I thought
end up having this year. So we've already got
buys. I thought you were about to ask me to estimate how many buys. I was going to say.
No.
Yeah. Right. So how many pay-per-views? Okay. So number 1, Quig Frampton. That's already done. Well, coming up. April the 9th.
Yep.
So that's 2. May the 7th, potentially. I think there's something going on with May the 7th. Why is Anthony Crolla fighting in May, not earlier, like he was going to? So they've moved that for a reason.
They've got Barroso, haven't they? Eddie's given him the envelope, and he's delayed it. Yeah.
So May the 7th, Crolla will be fighting, and Khan Canelo. Now, I'm not saying that's a done thing, but that's a potential. Klitschko Fury, so that could be 3. Klitschko Fury rematch, when that happens, at some point.
Definitely, yeah, that's 4.
That's 4. Kell Brook will have a big fight this year. I'm sure he will have a big fight at some point this year.
Brook goes to PBC in the States. They couldn't get away with putting that on pay-per-view over here, could they? I mean,
well, they will do.
No, but
it's the timing. No, it's
on record Sky when he fights.
Yeah, but it's the timing of it. And like I said, James DeGale was not deemed by Hearn, or certainly wasn't at the time, fighting for a vacant title to be a pay-per-view fighter. I think Brook is.
That wasn't pay-per-view, and that was he got like $2 million for that. So.
He did, but like I said, I think he's prioritising his guys. James DeGale is not really a matchroom guy anymore, So whereas Brook is 100% at the moment, so he's going to prioritise his own people. I mean, I think you saw that with like the Quig Frampton undercard. It's only half of Hearn's production, so he's not really put that much effort into the support to it.
Think Hearn might actually pull out the stops to pay the money to get the massive fight.
I don't think
he's in a position now where if he doesn't, and like I said, we're talking the calendar year. This is not necessarily June or July. Yeah. If he doesn't get Kell Brook a major fight this year, then he's doing something massively wrong. You could also turn around, and whenever I've defended him in the past on this, I've always said that the money for the welterweight division is not in the UK. You have to be in America. Certain divisions, just depending on what part of the world you're in, are dominated where they are. Heavyweight boxing is not about America at the moment. There's so much money and so many big fights in Europe,
the money was
and it has been for a while.
For a
so if in theory we're talking, if Brook lands a big fight, then you've got a Kell Brook fight. Anthony Joshua, if he wins in April, will fight again at the O2 in September.
Yeah.
That's going to be another one. Potentially, if he gets a third fight out in December, if they do that,
Yeah.
they always try and do
that's
some.
6 then, and that's 7 if Joshua fights again.
Yeah, and I think that's going to be your. I think that's going to be your amount. I don't think we will get, and that's not including anything that obviously Warren's supposed pay-per-view ambitions will be. So I think realistically 7. You could be looking at 6 or 7, depending on how things go. If Joshua gets injured in April and he's out for 6 months, or these little permutations could happen, I think the interesting one will be May the 7th. See what they do with that. But realistically, 3 in the first half of the year, and then potentially another 3/4 in the second half.
I think there'll be another one involving Fury, because I think it's either going to be Fury's lad free if he loses, because they'll just make that, or they'll put Fury Wilder stroke Povetkin will probably happen.
If Fury loses,
That's the unification. That'll be pay-per-view, won't it?
Yeah.
I don't think Fury will fight again this year if Fury beats Klitschko again. I don't think he will. I think if he wins, bear in mind obviously the fight is now not going to happen until at least, well, we could be looking more towards the summer now. I just don't see, if he wins the fight, the money he'll get from it. I think he's the kind of guy who would probably sit it out.
Yeah,
he's not going to risk fighting unless he has to fight a mandatory, and he'll wait for the massive fight next year, presuming things work out with Joshua.
If you've got Povetkin and Wilder fighting in May, which is what they're targeting, then that would line up really nicely as a unification for the end of the year. I'm not saying that will happen, but it would, in terms of the calendar, it would line up. Sorry, Paul, what were you saying?
Yeah, it would depend on whether Fury, obviously the Fury Wilder fight happens in America. The Fury Hay fight, which won't happen, but the Fury Hay Joshua Klitschko scenario would happen over here.
So if he fights in Germany.
So if he fights, the only fight that sees him leave the UK and potentially fighting at some silly time in the morning, which Sky have been reluctant at times to put those fights on pay-per-view because of obviously the number of buys they get in comparison and what they also cost to buy in. So I think I can see Fury realistically fighting once this year. I just don't see him being. He was never overly active anyway, and I just don't think he's the kind of fighter who would get himself up for a mandatory against, I don't know, a Josie Parker type. You know what I mean? I just think that he'd rather let a belt go. As long as he's got a belt, then I think he'll be happy with that.
Yeah, you're right.
But I think if Povetkin wins, as most of you suspect he'll win, you never know what sort of bid the Russians are going to make, because he's obviously bathing in money. He goes and offers Fury like $20 million or something mental.
Oh yeah, it would never be in the UK. That fight I don't think that fight would ever be over here, but it might be
It'd still be a pay-per-view, wouldn't it?
You have to think as well, obviously, that a lot of these promoters, they target the stadium fight ideas, especially we're talking about a lot of these mega fights, and what's almost restricting them is that promoters' unwillingness to work outside of the stadium idea. So Khan Brook realistically could happen at the end of this year, but it won't, because if it happens in the UK, they're going to want it to be a stadium fight, and you're not going to go outdoors in October or November. So realistically, you're putting yourself back to June. It's the same with Joshua and Fury. If Joshua won in April and Fury won against Klitschko, you think end of the year, massive fight between those two, but they won't. They'll just delay it. So I think that will restrict what will happen with certain fights, but for the rest of it, I think there's plenty of pay-per-views coming.
That reminded me of a funny conversation when Fury Klitschko was rescheduled. Do you remember at the last minute from October to November or whatever? And there was I remember some fan on Twitter just insisting that they were negotiating whether it would be at Wembley or still in Germany. And I kept saying, they won't do it at Wembley in November, mate. And he went, what? He just kept saying, why not? Why not? And then I pointed out the weather, and he literally just immediately blocked me. It was amazing.
Thing is, though, that's the problem. Like I said, even the rematch, like I said, people have talked about where it will be. It will just be Germany. It's just Fury's last fight did more pay-per-views than Joshua. So Fury, you have to say, from the UK side, he's still a very, very big deal. But I think it'll be interesting to see what happens to Joshua Martin. Joshua Martin, I think, will do a staggering amount of buys. I think it'll be absolutely. absolutely massive for Sky. People are already. I've had messages of all my mates that have booked hotels and stuff to try and get tickets to go, and I think it will be, from a numbers point of view, a massive, massive event, and I think it will make a potential Joshua Fury negotiation maybe a bit more difficult, but it all depends. I think we're relying on. Because remember, going into the start of last year, we thought there was going to be loads of pay-per-views. There were all the rumours that Sky had given, Matchroom a number that they wanted to try and achieve. And in the end, they had to kind of cobble shows together. They didn't have big headline fight pay-per-views. This year, that's what they do have. They've got a lot of big names in positions to make big fights. We've already got 2 lined up. Still plenty more to come.
Joshua Hay's a bigger fight than Joshua Fury.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Fury could sell it.
With the right hype, it is. I think Joshua fighting for the lineal heavyweight title is enormous.
Yeah, but the casuals.
Yeah, but they don't care.
Well, no, of course they do. I think
they see.
No, they do.
They see the
That's
name.
so easy to market. It's so easy to market.
It is. I'm telling you, mate. Joshua Hay. If Hay wins in May, depending who he's in with, and whoever, if he keeps winning as he is, Joshua Hay is a bigger fight than Joshua Fury. It shouldn't be really, but it just.
Well, I agree.
He's a massive name. And the lineal side of it, it would matter to certain people of who the real champion is. But I was reminded, when we're talking about Joshua fighting Martin, it reminded me a little bit of, when Hay went the heavyweight route, he fought Valuev. He took on Valuev as opposed to Klitschko at the time. And people, I don't think, gave him enough stick for that. Like, if that happened now, I think he'd get hammered for it.
Because lost to Holyfield, arguably.
Yeah, exactly. And Holyfield beat Valuev more conclusively than Hay did.
He'd been completely exposed. Yeah, and Klitschko was looking dominant. Yeah.
Exactly, but Hay was marketed then as the WBA world champion, as a legit proper world champion. And he's managed to become such a big name. And as much as we all joked about the Demore fight and what a farce it was, he's massive. He's a bigger name than arguably any of the heavyweight, but he's a bigger name than Joshua or Fury. But Joshua is on such a rise at the moment, and he's been pushed so heavily. I think the tickets for this will probably go in about 10 seconds, and all be on StubHub in 20 seconds. But Joshua Hay is the fight that I really want to see. But I just don't think Fury will beat Vlad in the rematch. So I think Fury's options will be limited.
Your views on Fury have been shown up as less than.
Well, if Vlad throws a right hand, he wins the fight. If he doesn't, then Fury wins easily. So
he won't be able to set himself.
Go on, mate. Go on.
Well, Vlad won't be able to set himself, so he won't be throwing any right hands. Fury wins by unanimous decision again.
Yeah, I think the fight will be worse. If it can possibly get much worse, will be more boring than the first one, because I think Vlad is he doesn't have it in his feet or his legs anymore. His movement's not there, and Fury knows
what he can do.
Yeah. I think if Fury wants to, he can put it on him a bit more. I don't think he should, because I think it's the risk side of it for him. He knows that he can outbox him and outmaneuver him, should I say. So that's what I mean. I'm not looking forward to that rematch, just because I thought the first fight, people thought I was quite bitter because I predicted it wrong. It wasn't that I got it wrong. I don't mind getting fights wrong. That's happened plenty of times. As long as it's a good fight. I just thought the first fight stunk. Whereas one thing you can say for Joshua and for Hay, their fights generally aren't terrible to watch.
I think the issue was that you didn't seem pleased, whereas I watched the fight, and obviously the fight was awful. I'll never watch it again. It was abysmal. One of the worst fights I've ever seen. But I was delighted watching it because after about 3 or 4 rounds, I was like, Fury's winning this. Oh my God, Fury's going to win. This is amazing.
We said before, you was watching like a changing of the guard.
Yeah.
That's always nice to see, regardless of how it happens.
Yeah, I mean, like I said,
on a replay, if you know the result, it would be awful. Like, I wouldn't recommend anyone to watch it. But I was watching it, and I was on the edge of my seat because you know that potentially Vlad could throw a huge punch or something, and it was exciting live. But I agree with you. From a technical, from a drama standpoint, it was.
I enjoyed it in a way that, because I quite like the reason why people whenever I get asked, really, who's my favourite fighter to watch, and I always say Amir Khan, because there's nothing quite like watching an Amir Khan fight. For at any moment it could all go tits up, but what you're watching is generally quite interesting. And it was a very, very interesting fight, but it wasn't exciting. And I think the only reason that I gave Fury credit, and when I scored the fight, I was scoring it along for the website when I was on it. I gave Fury it very wide. I've struggled to give Vlad any rounds at all.
No, it was just a bit closer, so I think it was more dramatic. Yeah. I think I had it 8-4, and so it was dramatic enough so that I thought, okay, there's a chance Fury. The judges might have this really close, and even going into the last rounds, I was like, right, Fury needs to win these rounds to be sure, etc. And
I think that this frustration for me came from the fact that I thought it wasn't Vladimir Klitschko in there. It was almost as though, I'm not saying Fury couldn't have beat Vlad if the fight happened 3 or 4 years earlier in terms of how Vladimir was fighting back then, because he still could have won. There's still that possibility. I think the frustration for me was that Vlad, you can look at it one of two ways. One, Fury put Vlad in a position where he couldn't do anything, or two, Vladimir Klitschko was incapable of doing anything. And I sort of went on the latter, and watching a man, I think my frustration was at Klitschko's non-action rather than what Fury did. Fury fought a brilliant, smart fight, and he showed that he could box to a game plan brilliantly over 12 rounds. Yeah, whereas Vlad showed that he first threw and landed, I think, a series round, I think round 9 or 10. He did nothing for 7 or 8 rounds. And when people say, oh, he did nothing, that's generally an exaggeration, but you looked at the punch stats, he did nothing, and that was my annoyance.
Standing up and getting off his stool, he
wasn't.
Oh, yeah.
He wasn't able to, not because he just didn't, because he wasn't allowed to.
Sam, the best quote I heard after the fight was, I can't remember who it was, but they said, a bit like the gangsters in The Dark Knight, he was suddenly faced with an enemy that he didn't understand, and I think he had no idea. So this mental gypsy come into the ring. Honestly, he got into the ring, and I've got a mate who is a massive Klitschko fan. He's a casual boxing fan, but he likes the heavyweights, and he hates Fury. And he kept saying, he wanted to go out to Germany originally, but then couldn't make it. He kept saying, I'm so excited. Fury's going to get chinned finally. He's going to shut up, and Vlad's going to prove it. And I'm so sick of these people, who have Fury in the conversation. And he texted me, he wasn't watching it, and he was like, what's going on? And I said, honestly, I've got Fury ahead halfway. And he said, no way. And I sort of explained it to him, and he was like, yeah, he let this mad gypsy, 7-foot gypsy guy, come to Germany, get his own way, and just, he never kind of woke Fury up. Like, he let this guy just act exactly how he wanted and fight exactly how he wanted. And you just thought, all he had to do was put his foot down and just sort of shake Fury up a bit, and then maybe it would have been totally different. But he never did, and he just let this insane guy kind of come in, and it was so strange to watch.
But did you not find that's what I mean? Did you not find that frustrating? Like, I remember with another big fight last year, Mayweather Pacquiao, because Mayweather's technical dominance. Pacquiao really tried for those first few rounds, and then realised he couldn't beat him.
I don't think he tried as much as
I thought. I know he probably could have done because of the health things, but the first couple of rounds, he was trying to get in range, he was trying to throw his shots, but he was outboxed. If that's how a fight goes, that's okay. But for me, Klitschko just didn't look. You watch any Vladimir Klitschko fight, that felt like nothing like I'd seen when he'd been in with good opponents, poor opponents. His unwillingness to throw that right hand was just painful.
You know what he's like. He needs both feet planted before he's going to throw that, and he didn't get the chance.
Yeah, but why? Because Tyson Fury's Pernell Whitaker. It's not like he's.
No. Tyson Fury just moved, and Vlad couldn't keep up the.
He was moving, and Vlad just kept thinking, like, who is the like? I think Vlad just looked bamboozled throughout the entire fight, and even throughout the build-up, he was like, "Who is this guy dressed as fucking Batman?"
You could see it when he took his stool after the first round. He looked, and he just looked like he was saying to himself, "What the fuck is going on?"
He wasn't hurt. He wasn't scared. He was just confused. It was like must have been like a really weird dream. And then suddenly he sees this guy singing Aerosmith across the ring, having beaten him, and he's just like, "What the fuck is going on? When am I?"
It was a hilarious storyline, like I said, and I think that I ended up defending Tyson Fury quite a bit from some of the attacks he got. I disagree with a lot of things that he says, but I think he did deserve more credit for what he did in the ring. And when we talked on the Asylum about like trainer of the year and stuff, I said that Peter Fury, just for what he managed to get Tyson to do, was brilliant. So, because I know I attract a lot of angry Tyson Fury fans for my reason, I thought he'd get knocked out in a couple of rounds. I do wonder if this rematch will actually happen. I don't know whether Vlad will win it.
But Paul, the only people who did predict Tyson Fury to win was people who were related to him or mad Irish people.
Yeah, do you
know what's right? And everyone's smart. Okay, with fight predictions, that's what I said. Everyone's smarter after the event. So after February the 27th, 50% of people on Twitter are going to think that they're brilliant and tactical nous boxing geniuses, and the other 50% will have got it massively wrong. And that's just, that's the way it goes. Like I said, I always joke that Fury Klitschko is not even in my top 3 of worst predictions. I thought Hopkins would score Kovalev. That's always been my favourite one.
I'll make that. Or
Yeah, exactly. So like I said, you can get things wrong, but Fury, to go back to like I said, we're sort of going very much off track, which tends to be how it goes. But Fury is a big name. He's earned a lot of money, and he'll only fight mega fights. I don't think he'll bother fighting the riffraff that Vlad's fought.
All right then. Someone sent us a good question earlier on. As we've drifted off, it kind of brings it back again.
Go on.
In the end of or the beginning of 2018, who do you think will be the top 5 heavyweights?
Yeah, this is a good one. Paul, I don't think you got sent it earlier, did you? Because I've had a bit of a chance. So everyone, think about this for a couple of minutes. So in 2 years' time, who will be in your top 5 at heavyweight? And obviously, we know people can get toppled off very quickly. But while people are thinking about it, I just really want to, because Alex is back now, I just want to say, Alex, mate, we were discussing it. You weren't here. You didn't have a chance to join in. But I know you're absolutely devastated about the Fight Pass news. I was wondering if you could shed any light on what's going on. Because I know you were hoping to get a Fight Pass subscription for Valentine, right?
Yeah, I mean, I was hoping to buy my 3rd Fight Pass subscription because 2's just not enough for any sane match.
In your house.
Yeah, exactly. There's me, there's my missus and my son, and we all need a Fight Pass subscription. We all need a Fight Pass T-shirt because we're true Fight Pass fans. And unless I'm giving Eddie Hearn £100 a year, then what sort of fan am I?
It must have had technical difficulties because I can't think of any other reason why they would have just stopped accepting Fight Pass members before.
Well, exactly. I mean, why would they stop it? Because currently they're probably earning at least maybe 120 grand a year doing absolutely fuck all. It costs them absolutely nothing to offer a priority system the way they're going. They could turn it into a loyalty system, for people that actually go to Matchroom shows throughout the year, not just the fucking casual bait Anthony Joshua ones that bring in all the fucking spastics. All the ones that go to the smaller shows. They could reward people who go to those with a little point system and not charge £30 a year because £30 a year for.
I'd like to see them use the profits from Fight Pass for a Matchroom video game.
Well, yeah, absolutely. A Matchroom managerial boxer, perhaps. A Matchroom promoter. Eddie Hearn's the boss, and you've got to perhaps be the matchmaker.
Can you imagine how bad that would be, and how much Hearn would charge? It would be £60 on PlayStation. It would be absolutely outrageous.
I'm surprised, and you have to download little add-ons like Banter Juice.
Would be £20 a month. It would be absolutely mental. Like Championship Manager, but you have to pay a subscription fee every.
You get unlockable characters like Isaac Chilemba and people like that.
When Eddie signs a new fighter, you've got to buy that and download a new fighter.
Yeah.
He'd accidentally delete the subscription. You'd have to pay again, and it was a terrible accident.
And the final boss is Carl Froch at Wembley.
Refereed by Ian John Lewis or something ridiculous.
Yeah, bonus stages are like negotiations with Khan or with Floyd or whatever, and how difficult the negotiations.
You see, the more we're talking about it, the more I think this is quite a good idea. I think they should push on with it.
As long as he's got Daniel Brizuela as an unlockable fighter, I'll play it.
Oh, definitely.
Right, anyway.
There's so many Matchroom favourites.
Easy mode is Christopher
top 5
Rabras.
heavyweights in 2018 then.
Yeah, has anyone got
5?
I'm struggling, but I think I've got 4. Who have I wrote down?
Yeah, I can only think of 3.
Do I need to put it in any order? Is it just any order?
Yeah, in any order, just give us some names.
Usyk.
Yeah, I knew you'd say that.
Joshua.
Joshua.
Fury. Times 2. Because I'm going to give Huey some love just in case, because I don't know if he'll be shit or not. And then I'm going to go for... Well, apparently, Savon, the Cuban who beat Joshua at the Olympics, is going to fucking flit and turn over after the Olympics this year, so I'll just chuck him in just in case.
He must be 40.
Oh, Savon?
Yeah.
He's the same age as me. He's 25. And also, interesting fact, on Wikipedia they've got him listed as being rated at lightweight.
Who was the one
very interesting.
In the Olympic final? Who was that?
Kinderlin. Mario Kinderlin.
Oh, Khan. Oh, yeah.
And he won like 3 golds, didn't he, or something, but never turned pro?
And he won
Kinderlin.
Yeah.
Kinderlan.
I had for mine. I had Ortiz in there because I think he'll
Ortiz is old,
in 2 years. I had Joshua just because I think whether he's picked up a loss, on the way.
He's got youth on his side, hasn't he?
Yeah, and I think he'll still be in the conversation in a couple. I'm not sure about Fury. I could see Fury winning a couple of massive fights and then just fucking off, to be honest.
That was my thought with it, but that's sort of why I put you in, because I thought I can see it getting to a point, maybe or in the next year we'll just start dropping belts for you to pick up.
In 2018, he'll be gearing up for his run at Morecambe MP, won't he?
He will be. I've been moving.
I also had Povetkin in, because I just think he's a really solid contender who will win more than he loses.
He'll be like 40 odd.
Exactly, and then I checked and saw that he was 36, so I think I might have to take that one out.
He's the youngest looking 36-year-old I've ever seen.
Well, he looks younger than Ortiz, and Ortiz is apparently 30. I think Ortiz is 40. Definitely.
Yeah, he's got to be
like
longer, hasn't he?
And the rest.
He's like Rigo. They're both over 40, I reckon.
The roids are keeping him young, I suppose.
And then another one I thought, and this will be controversial, just because I think there'll be one guy who's kind of in the conversation just because he's never stepped up but has a really good-looking record. And I think someone like Parker could still be undefeated in 2 years just because he hasn't fought anyone. And people rate him because it'll be like Berto a few years ago. You remember when he was like, but he just hadn't fought anyone. Then as soon as he stepped up, he got beat. But he was kind of in the conversation because he was undefeated.
I was thinking that, but I can see him having to fight someone. Maybe not a kill, but someone.
Paul, where are you, mate? Honestly.
You sound like you're eating your
You
microphone.
sound like the radio when you're driving home after a football game, when there's, dips in and out.
Not any better thing.
No one giving good old Andy Ruiz a shout then.
No,
The president will cash him out before.
Yeah, what about Ike?
Yeah, that's my top 5. We've got the president, who'll be number 1. David Tua will make a comeback. We'll see Tua argue Ibushi 2, and that'll be the greatest fight ever at heavyweight. Vitaly Klitschko will make a comeback. He'll be number 3. He'll lose to the president, unfortunately, but he'll carry on because that's what champions do. Number 4 will probably be King Kong. He'll go on. He'll lose to the president because it's the president. And number 5,
Peter Sutcliffe?
No, Peter Sutcliffe. He's making a run at middleweight. Actually, being in. He's boiled down. It's hard to bulk up on prison food. So, but hopefully, he might move up in the weights. But number 5 at heavyweight, I think we might just see. I'll go with Joshua.
Is nobody ranking Sonny Bill Williams?
I'm surprised not one of you had David Hay.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say, Sam. I thought Hay might.
Hay's in mine.
Hay's gonna fucking. He'll have one of the fights against Joshua or Fury, then he'll fuck off.
No, I think he beats Joshua. I don't think he beats Fury.
I don't know. Because by the time he fights Joshua, if he fights Joshua, it might be middle of next year.
Yeah, but if he wins that and gets 10 million quid, he'll just fuck off.
Exactly, yeah, he's not going to kick about. He's not bothered, is he? It's blatantly obvious that he's come back because he saw the hype around AJ and he thought, I can make some money there.
I don't think Hayes broke like some people do. I don't think he's complete. I don't think he's desperate for money. I just think he does it because he can, and he thinks I can probably make 5 million quid if I come back for a year. So I'm going to. We all know he wants to be in films. Like he wants to be James Bond. That's all he really cares about. But obviously he can't act, so he has to. Nice line of work. He can make millions of pounds fighting doormen. I think that he was described as Demori, fighting bouncers. And selling out arenas. It's ridiculous.
Also, another shock. Where was Lucas Brown in any of your lists?
Retired and in the Hall of Fame already.
Yeah, he's going to retire. He's going to retire on top after he beats Tragayev.
First Battle Hall of Famer.
Yeah, the first Australian heavyweight champion.
Legit heavyweight champion fighting for a real world title.
Who was that guy who had Brown as smashing Fury, and he said Fury was a paper champ? I saw that on Twitter earlier.
Yeah.
Kev Beauchamp.
Oh, that spastic's been talking about it pretty much ever since Fury beat Vlad. He has every opportunity that he's had. He's been saying that Fury paid Vlad off. Fury paid Vlad's off.
He didn't say Vlad. He said paid KK off.
Oh, KK. He paid them off. He paid Vladimir Klitschko.
You mean K2?
He was saying KK.
Okay.
He said KK. He paid Chisora off. He paid off. Some other fucking knobhead. And
He would have paid Fury off to deliberately go after Wilder instead of, and stay away from Fury. He would have paid all of them off to stay away.
Yeah, and now he's ducking Joshua and Hay and the rest of it, apparently.
He's paid Hay to come back to keep Joshua occupied, I reckon.
Do you not think with the heavyweights, there's kind of an alarm? We're struggling because a lot of other weights, we're thinking about what might happen in 12 or 18 months in terms of prospects as well. Like at heavyweight, there's not a lot. A lot of the people that we're talking about are names that have either been there before or are already around there now. And you, what was it, 2018? You said so. A couple of years' time. I mean, I'm glad no one mentioned Joseph Parker because I can't wait till he gets found out for what he is. But in terms,
I said he was an outside shout, but for the wrong reasons. Not because of the wins, but because he'd still have a very padded record and probably be undefeated. Because he wouldn't.
Yeah, I mean, he fights like most of my family live in New Zealand, and a couple went to go see him fight in Palmerston, and he's been in with crap and he's fighting crap, but because of the way that the Asian and Australasian rankings work, it's very, very easy to get yourself boosted up with like things like he's quite high in the WBO, is he?
I think he's top 4, isn't he, or something?
Number 1.
Yeah. Number 1 in the WBO, based on the fact that he's got those kind of belts. I mean, there's a couple of German heavyweights, Tom Schwartz and who's that other one?
He is awful, Schwartz. I watched him, I think, at the end of the last year or something.
Yeah, there was two German guys I remember seeing fight last year, but thinking, these are the kind of guys who'll probably be climbing the rankings. I don't know if Schwartz is ranked. I think he is with one of them. But they're not really anything that you'd think, right, he's the next guy. Whereas at other weights, we've already got people who we think next year might do something, or they're coming through who are 3-0, 6-0, 10-0. I think heavyweight's lacking that. I think in 2018, the names will be similar to what we have now. I think that obviously, depending on what happens with Joshua, I think Ortiz, if Fury sticks around that long, Hay isn't an outside shot because we're only talking, just under 2 years. I don't think the heavyweight's going to be drastically different to what it is right now.
I think it's funny, isn't it? Because if you were asked to name your pound for pound list in 2 years' time, that's probably a lot easier than, names who would be in and around the conversation. So you guys like Crawford and sort of people like that it's a no-brainer. But with the heavyweights, you're like, yeah, really, if they get a couple of bad losses, and they could just drop off completely.
But sometimes it takes a long time for that to happen. Like, I mean, a couple of years ago, people were talking about like Golovkin would be pound for pound number 1 by now, and while he's certainly not through his fault of his own, but he's not. And I think it depends on certain fighters and how slow the push is from them, or how difficult it is for them to get meaningful fights. So I think that's what would say. And you're right, thinking that pound for pound or other weights is a lot easier. I think the heavyweights, it's so up in the air. We've been used to watching basically like almost like a lift. Everyone's waiting to get to the top, fight Vladimir, get knocked off, get back down the stairs, and then try again. But now, because there's so many different avenues, I think you'll see it's better in a way because we're going to get more fights and people willing to fight each other earlier. But I just think the quality, I mean, the fact that Joshua, in the amount of fights that he's had, is able to fight for a world title, and people go, okay, that's fair enough. Any other way, a guy who had fought at British level only and had fought 15 times, jumping up to a world level, you might question.
It's not world level, though, is it?
Yeah, but it's in a world championship. Like I said, I mean, even in some of the
had that route, would you? You wouldn't have been able to backdoor your way to world level in the same way.
No, exactly. Right. Exactly. And you see the struggle that certain fighters, British fighters, that is especially, have had to try and manoeuvre themselves into a world title. Really having to get that. Even if Joshua didn't have the big backing. I mean, Joseph Parker. I mean, like I say, he's not got massive backing. He's popular in New Zealand, but it's a small country. He's got himself in a position to be number 1 with the WBO. Because the division is that poor that that's a possible thing to happen. It just really lacks the depth that pretty much every other weight class has at the moment. And I think the shout for Usyk was quite interesting because I don't know if he will go up to heavy, but he's certainly got the size and the frame to do so. Yeah. And he's got an awful lot of talent. So that could be a possibility.
It's a bit of a stretch. The guy's he's not even fought for a title though. The first weight yet. I think that's ambitious. I don't see why wouldn't Usyk stay at cruiserweight and just dominate there?
Well, the plan, from what he said, is obviously he's fighting for the title probably in May, depending on what happens with the Cunningham situation.
Well, he's fighting for a title, right?
Yeah. Is it WBO? Yeah, WBO belt, and he's going to try and get some fights. But the issue they've got is the Ukraine-Russia problem. So because half the other champions are fucking Russian,
No, but Lebedev is
Get him over.
there's a unification fight, isn't there?
Yeah. Ramirez is fighting Lebedev, so that's 2 of the belts. So then that'd leave Drozd, who's Russian.
Yeah.
Lebedev, who's Russian with 2 belts.
Just fight him in Russia and knock him out.
Yeah, that's not going to happen.
Guillermo Jones knocked him out.
But he's not going to go to Russia because of the shit.
Why not?
Right now.
Iranians go to Russia.
Yeah.
He's not going to get killed if he steps on Russian soil.
I don't think he will, no, but I think he's sort of trying to make a political point of it because he keeps sort of...
That is a duck. That is a massive duck. I'm not going because of politics. Not boxing politics. Real world pathetic. Right, get him off. I'm sick of... what did Cameron call him? The silent...
Usk.
The silent destroyer. Oh, it's so funny. Anyway, we're going to be nice to Cameron tonight, so yeah, be civil, guys. Okay, so heavyweight, we've got an idea, but you really can't be sure, and we think that maybe it might be stagnant, and you could see the same guys there in a couple of years that are there now.
Yeah, but again, it's an Olympic year, and you never know what's going to happen this year at the Olympics. Someone who wins gold this year.
Fowler.
At heavyweight. I'd like to see Fowler at heavyweight.
Mate.
I'd like to see Fowler at heavyweight. Get him in with King Kong.
You know what I like about Fowler? It's really refreshing. There's just no excuses when he loses. It's a really refreshing attitude. He just takes it and moves on.
Yeah.
I want to say shout out to Anthony Fowler, who will be dominating Bellew of the Week lists in the next 3 or 4 years when he turns pro.
Oh.
He's going to be pound for pound Bellew of the Week within a few fights.
What did he say the other day about Huey Fury shitting it or something?
We said... I don't know. I'm blocked by him now.
Something about Huey Fury not fancying the Joshua fight.
Yeah, that was it. Yeah.
I bet Eddie would have paid him really well for that. Do you want to come over on a week's notice and I'll give you 50 grand? Yeah, no thanks.
50 grand? He's not going to pay him that.
What was it? I think Dillian White got like 100 grand, didn't he, or something? Fuck all.
Fucking hell.
It's weird with Huey Fury. Huey Fury, unless I'm wrong, someone might tell me I am. He's not ranked in any of the top 4 for heavyweight for WBC, WBA, IBF, or WBO.
No.
And yet, I mean, not that his record's anything fantastic, but you know, he's. Who was the last guy he fought? Not the last guy. He
fought Larry
Dmitry.
The last one. He fought Rudenko.
Yeah, so he fought Rudenko and won that well. You'd think that.
Who's his next opponent? Has it confirmed now?
Still not coming out.
Tom Bob Anderson, mate. He's got his next opponent on the 26th of March.
Oh right. I thought it was going to be. Yeah.
What?
No, it's still TBA.
Lucas Brown got his mandatory fight in Rudenko, did he not?
Exactly, that's what I mean. He beat Rudenko. Rudenko was 24-1 or something at the time. You know, that was a good win, and yet it didn't seem to make any real sort of dent in the rankings, at least.
Yeah, he doesn't. I don't think he's fought for like the regional belts, or has he?
No, he's not fought. He's not fought for any form of belt or title or anything. And I think that's what I mean. That's what's hurting him. Whereas your Parkers can fight for the Euro-Asia, Pan-Pacific, Nigerian, Malta title, and they can get themselves a top 3 or 4 ranking.
Fight for African belts as well down there. I remember that Leopai fighting for an African title for some reason. Absolute nonsense. Like completely, you know, the fucking. Honestly, this is going to sound racist, but the belt had palm. It genuinely had palm trees on it. It was mental. It was like the Calypso title or some nonsense.
You know, it always makes me laugh. You know when Thompson fought Solis in a rematch? They fought in Turkey and it was for the Continental Americas belt.
Yeah.
And I was like,
I guess they qualify for it, don't they?
Yeah, it'd be like someone fighting for the British title in like New Zealand.
I'm going to throw one more name out there before we move on. Tepper, comeback, top 5, 2018. And Big Pricey as well. Big Pricey is coming back. That's a good shout for Joshua's first defence, eh? That's a big sell.
Price?
Yeah, Big Pricey.
Nah, not a chance. I don't think they'd take that risk.
I think Price may go down as one of the most frustrating fighters of the last few years to come through because in a lot of ways he has so much ability and that right hand is just concussive, but he's come off harsh in terms of the guys he's been in with, obviously with the ped use, but fundamentally there's something wrong with his ability to take a shot.
He's not a fighter. He doesn't have the mental.
Exactly.
He's not. Yeah, exactly. Mentality at all.
whereas I think his skill set's very good, and it's a shame that it hasn't quite. Well, I say it hasn't worked at all, has it? You know, he got to a certain level. Everyone was talking about him being the heir apparent to Vlad not that long ago, and it's just all gone so south so quickly. And it's obviously we'll get onto the Kevin Mitchell chat, I imagine, later. But it's frustrating to see a fighter like that not quite get to where he should have done based on the talent that he's got.
Well, yeah, perfect segue. I know Alex is devastated about this, but Kevin Mitchell has announced his retirement despite being in training for the European shot next month. Has said basically that he felt, going through training, going through the motions, he just didn't have it. Been in a lot of tough fights, especially recently. Had a couple of bad losses. Seen a lot of chat about him being one of the best to never win a world title. I know Alex has some thoughts on this, so fire away, mate.
He's a cunt. I mean, one of the worst things I hate in this sport is just wastes of talent. It really frustrates me because, that was my main gripe. I don't really want to compare Floyd Mayweather to Kevin Mitchell, but I'm sort of segueing into that point. But that's the thing that annoyed me about Floyd Mayweather is that, in a sense, he wasted his talent by not fighting or not attempting to fight some of the biggest names out or really, really challenging himself, in a sense. But Kevin Mitchell is a waste of talent in a different way entirely because, he's always got an excuse and he always sort of messed about and always took, to the parties and all the rest. Fair enough, he's allowed to do that. He's, he earned the money. He's allowed to go blow it on fucking sniffing beer if he wants. But unfortunately, it means that he doesn't reach his full potential, and then he ends up blaming it on extraneous things and not really taking the blame for himself. He says, "Oh, it was the weight," or I didn't train properly, and all the rest of it. Sometimes you're just not good enough, and you got smashed about.
But do we think on his day he is good enough or not?
Yeah, I think that I've made this point a couple of times that it's how shit the lightweight division is at the moment and has been for the past few years, and how easy it is to maneuver yourself into a world title, with 4 or 5 belts, even 6 if you count, ring belt and 3 WBA belts. He still couldn't get any of them. It's fucking.
I think it's very damning that Crawler won a title and Mitchell didn't, because for my money, Mitchell naturally, in terms of natural talent, Mitchell is levels above Crawler. Crawler works a lot. But
yeah,
Mitchell,
that's the parallel, isn't it?
Natural talent. Yeah.
That is the real parallel. Is that Anthony Crawler tried really hard and he put in all that fucking effort. Sometimes he came short because he doesn't have that natural talent that Kevin Mitchell does. But he put in the hard work and the hard effort. It's a similar case with Ricky Burns, I think. And as much as we love bringing up Ricky Burns, he's not the most naturally gifted fighter, but he's a fucking hard worker. He really puts the fucking work in. And again, that is the difference, I think. If Kevin Mitchell had the likes of Crawler and Burns' dedication, he would have been a fucking excellent fighter. But unfortunately, he isn't. And, it's disappointing. It is really disappointing because, maybe, he wouldn't have beat... I don't think he would have beat Katsidis, because Katsidis was a fucking monster on the night.
But I think he could have given Katsidis a much tougher fight. And we've seen him fight big punchers before and not just be blown out like that. And I think on his day, he could have definitely beaten a guy like Perez or someone like that, on his day.
Well, he would have smashed Perez, I think, easily.
But yeah, he must be, when he looks at Crawler and thinks, potentially the big fights Crawler will get, and especially with Hearn paying Barroso off, as he quite clearly has done. The big fights that are down the line for Crawler, and if he sees a guy like Derry Matthews win a title, and you just think he just levels above these guys in terms of natural ability. But yeah, like you said, it was always cutting corners, I suppose, is the word for it, isn't it? Just doing slightly less than he should have done. Sorry, Sam, go on.
He said in that IFL interview that he must have been mad if he thought he could beat Burns living the lifestyle he was, because now he trains with Burns and sees how hard he works. He said he must be dreaming, yeah.
He sort of admitted it, didn't he? He said, I watched Burns train after we fought, and I realised, I was really half-arsing it in the build-up to that fight, and I thought, I can beat him. If I turn up, I can win. Whereas it was never about, he wasn't really worried about the opponents, which isn't really the best attitude to have. Because even someone as talented as Floyd, he's studying his opponents all the time and a real student. Paul, eulogy for Kevin Mitchell? Any words to say?
Again, it's Kevin Mitchell. He's not the best British fighter. He's never won a world title, but again, horrendously frustrating to see how his sort of career panned out in a certain way. I mean, he'll probably be happy because he probably made quite a lot of money. He was a mainstay on Sky and on the Frank Warren shows back in the day as well. But the thing that I have to Mitchell is, he was an ABA champion at 18. A fantastic amateur, turned over. The record looked good to start with, but obviously there was all the rumours behind the scenes. Everyone knew what was going on with him and his home life, which for a lot of fighters, they do struggle to have that sort of balance between being a professional fighter and what goes on outside the ring, and other very talented amateurs have struggled with that. But for me, what made it almost unforgivable was that, unlike a lot of fighters, he was given a world title. It was the interim shot, but he was given a world title in his home football ground, at Upton Park, in a fight that was difficult but winnable against Katsidis. And the fact is, he didn't train for it.
Yeah.
He just didn't train for it. If he lost the fight, he lost the fight, but he never put himself in a position to succeed in that fight because he didn't make the effort. Exactly.
Yeah.
What was happening the weeks before, I think there was rumours about he had to move back to his mom's or something. And okay, so you make a mistake, you get that wrong. Then you get given a second chance. You get given, in between these fights, he's fought and beat the likes of Prescott and boxed well on occasion. His fight with John Murray was just fantastic. Again, a fight he was struggling in, but turned around and won. Then he gets another big chance. He gets to fight a world champion in Ricky Burns, who had done well to win that belt. Mitchell should have been really a match for him in terms of talent. And he didn't just lose, he got blown away again. I mean, how many fourth round knockouts, is it fourth or fifth round, does Ricky Burns have? He doesn't stop that many fighters, and he blitzed Kevin Mitchell. Okay, so you've blown that shot. Then what happens? You get a massive fight on the Wembley bill, the biggest British bill in a long time, in a winnable, which he did actually win the fight, IBF World Title Eliminator. I interviewed him the day before the weigh-in. I was down at the press conference. No signs there's anything wrong, no mention there's anything wrong. He goes and blows the weight. Another opportunity blown, wins the fight, a fight he was losing, but blows the weight. He then is forced to go around a difficult route, takes the Linares fight, and the Linares fight is one where I genuinely think...
performance against this guy in the meantime. Looks like he might finally be getting it together. Yeah. Yeah,
but the problem was he got it together, and I think for his last 3 fights, he was genuinely in shape and very much up for the fight. I think, unfortunately, after 41 fights, which he'd had before he'd fought Linares, his body, and he just didn't have the ability to be in too many tough fights. He'd crashed the weight too many times, and I think his body was letting him down. His talent alone should have been enough to win some of those big fights he was in. He should have beaten Ricky Burns, he should have given Katsidis a really good run. He did look good on occasion. Estrada, Brady's Prescott, John Murray, where he really put it on his opponent. But the Barroso fight just showed he was in with a tough fighter, but he was having to take that route because he'd blown the other routes because he messed up the weight against Maduma. Yeah. So he is one who, I think with a lot of things, I also come back to work, it's a skill or a will issue with him. He had all the skill, but in his early career, he didn't have the drive to get himself properly in shape, or at least to dedicate himself that he needed to. And part of that may have been out of his control. Everyone has personal lives, but he blew it. And his ability, he's not number one because obviously Harold Graham for everyone is from a British point of view, but there aren't many above him who, on talent and ability alone, who didn't go on to win that world title. I think he is right up there.
I'm trying to think of others from Britain. It's Harold Graham's the obvious one, but
Michael Watson.
Michael Watson, did he?
Yeah.
Oh, I thought he
never won.
Sorry, I thought he had like a trinket at some point. But I think, Paul, the one you mentioned, Katsidis is another one, isn't it? I know he's not British, but just Katsidis, I think, was a case of coming up against excellent champions. And I know he had the interim belt and stuff, but I'm not counting that. But Katsidis was up against excellent champions every time.
Right. I think sometimes you can just be stuck at the wrong time in the wrong way. I mean, there are a lot of very good heavyweights in the 60s, 70s, and 80s who never won a world title just because of the dominant people that were in the era when there were less belts. Obviously, it's far easier to win a title, and that's the frustrating thing for Mitchell. He could have gone 4 different routes to win a title, and I think he tried 3 of them.
He had 4. The interim shot, and then the Barroso was going to be the final belt, wasn't it? That was the WBA was the one he hadn't challenged for yet.
He'd never fought for the IBF, had he?
Wasn't that? I thought that was against. Well, that was going to be against Maduma, wasn't it? But then he fucked the weight and had to go.
Yeah, so because he fought the WBC Linares, Barroso was the WBA route, and then WBO. So he'd had
top 5 with the organisations at one point or another, I think.
But do you know what I will say? The positive thing I will say, like I said, I've always enjoyed watching him fight, and also I respect the fact that he looked at his situation and he went, do you know what? I don't have it anymore. Because he could have fought Tatley, he could have fought again because he's popular. Sky like him, and for London shows he's always been popular. But he looked at it and went, you know what? I don't want to be getting beaten up and losing fights that I shouldn't be losing. And the stuff about his speech being slurred is nonsense. Watch an interview of him when he's 19 or 20.
Yeah, I think he sounds pretty bad at the moment.
No, you watch an interview of him when he's like 22, 23. He sounds very, very similar. He's got his accent's quite strong. And when I interviewed him, I was listening to some of the audio the other day. He was the same 12, 18 months ago. I don't think he's deteriorated. I just think he's just got a difficult voice. But he actually was smart enough, and the people around him were smart enough to say, right, enough's enough. Let's walk away. And I think he does deserve a bit of credit for that at least.
For a man who'd been very dishonest with himself at various points in his career, I think he was very honest in the decision to retire, which is commendable. I agree. And Alex, I know you're just from a personal note, you're gutted because you just always loved him, right? And you love his attitude and.
Well, I liked his fights. I'll be fair to him. I always enjoyed watching Mitchell fight because he was usually in an exciting fight, and most of his fights I've enjoyed, like I said. But again, that little niggling feeling was always there that he got shots, that he got so many opportunities that other fighters that put in a lot more effort and work a lot harder than he does, and so
many opportunities at home as well. Yeah,
exactly, and he got all those opportunities in fucking the Casitas fight in West Ham, for fuck's sake. He got that, and it's just he fucks it every single time, and it's just disappointing.
But yeah, I know he's going to be doing some training. You never know, he might be. I think what was the joke? He said, I know all of the bouncers at all the nightclubs around Dagenham. So if any of my fighters are out and about, I'll know about it. So they won't make the same mistakes I did. So I don't know. Maybe he'll end up being a decent trainer with Tony Simples, Rocco's favourite. Another quick one, another quick news item which came up today, according to a video with Bob Arum. Walters Lomachenko is done. He's just in Bob Arum's fashion. They're just working out the venue, the date, and the weight. But apart from that, it's done. So I don't know if that'll be. I presume that'll be at a catch weight. I don't think Walters would go all the way down. Not too keen on fighting people his own size. My personal opinion of him. But my question to you guys. Obviously, it's a great fight. Don't need to pick a winner now. It's a sort of a really, really good world championship boxing fight on HBO. If that fight goes to 130, my question is 130 the best division in the sport if those two are up there campaigning?
That's a good shout.
Because I'll read off my list, put it in the chat, I know, but for the listeners, you've got Uchiyama, you've got Miura, you've got Vargas, you've got Javier Fortuna, you've got Walters Lomachenko, Salido, Pedraza, Stephen Smith, Roman Martinez still. And these are guys who have consistently put on action fights with each other. Salido Martinez trilogy. Pedraza's a fun fighter.
We said this before. You can pick any. You can pick any two at the top
combination
15.
of those would be, and even Stephen Smith. As much as I hate the Smith brothers, Stephen Smith is a fun fighter to watch. He's throws a lot of punches, very aggressive. And I think any combination of them, any unification fights at that weight, would be. I think it's a really, really good division that's going under the radar a bit at the moment.
I think you're right. I think it's quite open. Like the thing is, it is open. It's waiting for someone to get in the big fights and sort of try and stamp their name on it.
I just hope. I think it needs to happen soon because fights like Miura Vargas are the type of fights that really take years off of both guys' careers. And yeah, it would be a shame if they all end up like Juanma Lopez or without. And also, sorry, that reminds me, Gamboa's down there now, isn't he? He's gone back down to 130, so he's in the mix as well. I don't know if he's ever going to, fight regularly again, but
I don't think.
I think a lot of it you look across, and it's the strength of is every champion in the division good. And you have to say in this case it is. Like, so there's a couple of other weight classes that are. I mean, I think flyweight has the strongest in terms of dominant world champions across the three high quality world champions in Gonzalez, Estrada, and Renrong. But I think 126 is also decent, to be fair, as well as at 130. But the quality of the champions at 130, you have to say, is very good.
126 is great, but I don't think any of them will fight each other. That's the problem. Whereas
yeah, that's it. So you've got, so there's very, very makeable fights at 130, and I think that, I mean, I'm a big fan of Walters. I think the fight's all wrong for him. I think that Lomachenko wins it, but he's an exciting fighter to watch. So if that fight does happen, but obviously it's Big Bob, and we all know how he ruined the fight I was desperate to see. I said Lopez Gambo. I was well on Lopez when he was coming through and knocking everyone out in a round, and I remember him being on one of the American pay-per-view undercards, and I think he fought Ponce de Leon.
Leon, yeah.
Yeah, and just blitzed him, and I was desperate for that fight, and it ended up just going tits up. So hopefully that doesn't happen with this, and we see it happening.
Fucking blitzed him again like 8 years later. Do you remember that one when everyone thought Wanma was finished, and then he had that one last. Ponce knocked him down and was just wailing on him, and I had money on Ponce to win that fight. I can't remember, that was about 18 months ago, wasn't it? And then Wanma landed that one, his last good punch in his entire career, and then took about 3 KO losses after that. And that was it must be so annoying for Ponce to never have got one over on him. But yeah, ultimate example of a fight being marinated too long, isn't it? Another one would have been, I think, Peter Quillin against anyone, really. I think Quillin has almost ruined his career now. He's irrelevant now. He's taken that loss. He just sat on the belt and did nothing with it. And there were plenty of really good, not necessarily Golovkin, there were lots of good, could have fought Martinez back in the day, all these sort of fights that would have been really, really good. Andy Lee rematch, potentially. And he sort of ended up doing nothing and then has lost the belt in a really kind of inglorious way. Well, vacated it and then lost to Jacobs. And now he's completely irrelevant. And he's kind of lost his, I think he's been and gone now. It's a shame.
Kell Brook should take note of what Quillin's done.
Yes.
He should also take note that Quillin has earned a lot of money while he was doing it. And Kell Brook's not.
Quillin ducked the Brook fight, though. He wouldn't go
Obviously.
to the
No.
Eddie Hearn had it booked out, yeah?
Yeah. Catch weight. £148 catch weight, which I thought was fair enough.
And he had it booked out on a date when...
when the pitch was getting dug up, and when I told him he couldn't use it because he couldn't get into the ground, and the reply was, "No, you're wrong, you're lying."
I love it. Being accused of lying by Eddie, that's a new low.
Yeah.
But right.
It was, let's move on.
Yeah. Let's not retread old ground, eh?
No, let's not.
Eh?
Let's not.
No one.
I gathered that, but I just thought, let's move on.
Thanks.
I got that, but it was poor.
Now, our listeners are very stupid, I think they might. Right, so final thing for today. It was about 10 days ago, actually. It was the 20th anniversary of Boxing After Dark, which was obviously HBO's, I guess, the brainchild of Lou DiBella in the mid-90s. And if anyone hasn't listened to it, the HBO podcast, which is great anyway, had Lou DiBella on last week, and they were talking about what inspired him to create Boxing After Dark as an alternative to World Championship Boxing, and his kind of struggle with the network at the time to create this alternate platform for smaller fighters and fighters without the big names is fascinating. So I recommend you all go and listen to that. But to put it in a nutshell, he found as a matchmaker there were all sorts of fantastic guys at the smaller weights who couldn't get on main HBO in significant slots because at the time HBO was very, very driven by star power and names, and guys like Roy Jones and the sort of the established and Holyfield and all, when there were a few heavyweights still around and Lewis and all this stuff. And he found he had guys like Barrera, he had guys like Gatti, he had guys like Mickey Ward, who were sort of guaranteed action fighters who would do good ratings and people would enjoy it, and the people who watched it would tune in again the next time. And he couldn't get the producers to put them on Championship Boxing because they wanted, they had Roy Jones tied to a multi-million-dollar deal or whatever it was. So he came up with Boxing After Dark. He put the first show on February the 3rd, so we're slightly late, but almost 20 years ago, 1996. I think you guys should know what the first headlining fight was for Boxing After Dark. Do we know?
Silence.
Barrera McKinney.
Yeah, Google, well done. And
No, I muted myself.
undercard was Johnny Tapia as well. So another, action fights. Barrera McKinney, fantastic fight. I think Barrera's first time ever on American TV. Obviously went on to become a staple of HBO pay-per-view and regular. And then just a couple more from that first year. March 23rd, so 6 weeks later. Gatti against Rodriguez, the one where Gatti's eye went and he had to cover his trainer was tapping him to tell him how many fingers the guy was holding up. And then you had Junior Jones versus Canizares on the undercard, which is an unbelievable fight, which really you could see both guys getting old overnight in that one. Like they beat the prime out of each other. Fantastic fight. And then skip forward slightly, and we've got Morales versus Daniel Zaragoza. So Eric Morales' first fight on American TV again, against sort of a real crossroad. Fantastic fight again, if anyone hasn't seen it. Zaragoza, one of the best chins ever, passing the torch to Morales, who was amazingly, if you watch that fight, people are really skeptical about Morales. They don't like what they see. They think he's a hype job, etc., etc. And that was kind of the one where he really put it all together and went to that next level. And a bit of trivia. Anyone know who was on the undercard of that in their first ever HBO appearance?
Floyd Mayweather.
Floyd, yeah, very good. So DiBella, in about the space of 18 months, gave TV to Morales, Barrera, and Floyd. So a pretty good streak, you might say. So sorry for rambling, but where this is going is ultimately with Boxing After Dark over the course of 20 years. We've had fights like Rios Alvarado. We've had Gatti against Ward, obviously, arguably, the greatest fight of the last 30 years, probably. We've had Costa against Phillips. We've had Ortiz Maidana. We've had Cotto Torres. And what these fights have in common is no star names at the time. People who would go on to become stars, maybe, but no stars at the time. And just action fights where DiBella said the ethos was you weren't creating stars, you were creating star matchups, essentially, and you were creating fights that were so good, people would tune back in, regardless of, and they would be, they'd become loyal to that brand rather than loyal to a particular fighter, if that makes sense. But then obviously guys like Gatti were so entertaining, people would follow them sort of wherever they went against anyone. And the question we had from this was whether such a thing would be possible now in the UK or in Europe or somewhere that's not America, and whether you could kind of, in Eddie Hearn's terms, create a channel for trade fights, as Eddie loves to call them, Cardle Dodd, Nurse against Jenkins, fights like that, where there's no bullshit ranking alphabet nonsense involved. There's no mismatch with a sort of rated prospect. They're just fights that are guaranteed action, and whether we think that would be feasible now. And I know it might not make money, but it might create new fans to the sport, which I think is, a good goal for promoters in the long run.
Shep, can I take a big massive poo on this idea? The big problem is that Sky, with their 20-odd dates a year, struggle to fill them with decent fights. That's their mainstay channel. It's not like in America where channels like HBO and Showtime are having to really limit. They're going, only the best stuff gets on those channels, and then everything else gets drip fed onto what was at the time Boxing After Dark or Showbox. Sky struggle to make decent headline fights on their non-pay-per-view shows, and struggle to get generally 2 or 3 fights or chief support and the undercard to be decent fights. The best fight of the night is generally, and we've always said this, is a trade fight, but they're the fights invariably that probably get less viewing figures because people don't know who they're watching. Yeah, so for all the Tommy Martins and people like that, I just think that it's a good idea if Sky were churning out good stuff every time, but they're not. I think channels like Sky have got so much work to do on their general Saturday night shows. And I think every Saturday night show should have a trade fight, and I hate calling them trade fights. You know what they mean when they say trade fight, when Eddie Hearn says that? He means a non-world title fight where the odds are close, because everything else he puts on, the fighters are 1 to 100, 1 to 10, 1 to 25 to win. The trade fights are generally like 4 to 5, 10 to 11, etc. So they're competitive.
But if you see, just going back slightly, what you said a minute ago is exactly the problem in terms of the customer, where you said they'll get less viewing figures because the customer will want a name. But isn't that exactly the type of behaviour that Sky, as a longer-term goal, should be trying to change? They should be trying to change that culture and build up a reputation where maybe people will tune in regardless to Fight Night because they know. And Boxing After Dark did it within a year or two, where they had this loyal audience who would watch the Boxing After Dark even if they didn't know who was fighting, because they knew that it was going to be that kind of, it was going to be an action fight, it was going to be a brawl.
No interest in it.
No, but
All they want is money.
Sorry.
No, I was going to say go on, actually, go on, mate.
No, you crack on, mate. Go on.
I was going to say that the difference is you look at, right. So we're talking about HBO Boxing After Dark, the American channel for American audience. They've obviously got a big Hispanic viewing as well. But when you look at the top 10 or 11 fights that were on Boxing After Dark, pretty much all of them involved international fighters, because the American audience, the one thing I will say, they're smarter. They will happily sit and watch. I mean, the Oleg Maskayevs of the world, they are, when you watch things like Morales, Zaragoza, Phillips, Kostyazu, I don't know if Phillips is American or not, I might have made myself look very silly there. But, these kind of guys, they're willing to sit and watch a high-quality international fight. Cotto Torres, that's a perfect example. Whereas, could you imagine a Sky show where they went, right, well, here's a really good German guy against a really good Russian guy. For some reason, and it's not just Matchroom, because the other promoters haven't done it either in the past, the UK boxing audience doesn't seem to want to watch international fights on UK shows. We only ever get UK fighters, or both fighters involved are from the UK, or it's one UK, one international. We very, very rarely get a good international fight or any international fights. I think if they were,
that's a culture of the audience that could be changed if given the quality of the fights.
Well, Frank is dipping his toes in, and with Tete, he's going to try and do something if he can.
Exactly, and if Tetty's in 5 or 6 action fights, if Tetty's in the fight of the year this year, then you'd like to think that word would spread, and maybe next time people would see his name and think, I don't care if he's fighting a British guy, I want to see this guy because he's exciting and because he's good or whatever. And I just think it's something that Sky should be trying to challenge, and it's not a case of they can't afford it, because the guys who they could get over aren't people who are going to be on huge wages. Whereas maybe if you're having to pay God knows what in sanctioning fees for some nonsense eliminator, for Callum Smith or whatever, then maybe it's actually going to be more expensive because you've got all these extra costs to consider. And yeah, I just feel like it's a way of building a longer term audience and creating new boxing fans, which I think
do know
something the UK we're really bad at doing it. We create guys who are attached to stars and people that drive Alex up the wall, who will tune in once a year to watch David Hay fight because they know who he is. But they don't give a shit about the sport otherwise. And that's what we need to change. We need to create people who just want to see good fights and don't have this kind of football fan mentality of just wanting to see the home guy win, regardless of the opponent, which I think is completely the wrong way to look at the sport. Sorry, Sam, go on.
Paul's right, though, because being stateside, they've got a much bigger talent pool to choose from. They've got Mexico, when you can guarantee, chuck a couple of Mexicans, they're going to have a good fight usually. We haven't got that, have we? If you bring, like Paul said, if you bring a German and a French guy over, no one will watch it.
But if it's a good fight, then maybe the word will spread that, that German and that French guy, that was a really good fight. So the next time, maybe you get a rematch going, and then you build it from there. And I think quite quickly you could end up with people, rather than shrugging their shoulders at 2 foreigners, saying, well, it's 2 foreigners, but most of the time I've seen 2 foreigners fight, it's been really good. And it boggles, maybe it's me being out of touch, but it boggles my mind when people are happy to watch, a guy like Scotty Card. I know Cardle's a bad example because he's actually been in a couple of good fights recently, but a guy like Gavin McDonnell who sells no tickets and has no fans in a nonsense fight against some nondescript, I don't know, French or Portuguese guy for some made up, I don't know, intercontinental belt, and you just think, surely I'd much rather watch I'd much rather watch Garrido against that Spanish guy going mental and kicking the post in. That would be mild.
No, but that's the thing. So, but Sky do show, when they have showed international content and good fights, the viewing figures just aren't there. Box Nation have got this problem as well. I mean, Box Nation have done nothing but provide brilliant international content, and not enough people care. And we want to see the fights. Like the Tete experiment is going to cost Warren a lot of money. because he's got to pay him. Tete will sell literally. People say 0 tickets. He will sell 0 tickets, and he'll be in some good fights.
Fans though, if someone catches him on the telly, because the product.
He'll get fans, but the TV money doesn't make up for that. So the reason why your Gennady Golovkins and your Kovalevs, etc., could be pushed through in America is because it doesn't really matter to the promoter whether the show sells out or no. They just want to provide a good fight or a good fighter to the network. The network take all the brunt of it. Whereas over here, it's the other way around. The reason why these kids, even the likes of Lee Selby's, are out fight week hand delivering tickets is because the demand from that side is so much because the promoters have to have a full venue. Whereas if you've got, say, 8 fights on a card and 2 or 3 of those fighters are going to sell 0 tickets, you're going to end up losing an awful lot of money. And that's why that's the real reason why it doesn't happen. It's not that, promoters don't want to put good fights on or good fighters on. It's just, it's all about the numbers, unfortunately. And
really, the fixation on nonsense eliminators and world title trinkets means that many fights just don't happen because there's nothing kind of in it for the promoter in that sense. Do you know what I mean?
Oh yeah, exactly. Why does Dave Ryan and John Wayne Hibbert get a slot on Sky? What's the real reason they get a slot on Sky? Because they'll sell 1,000 tickets plus between them.
It's a good fight, though.
No, it was. That's what I mean. So that's why they get on Sky. So we get, and there are lots of good trade fights and fights that I go and see live. That I always think one of my favorite fights I've ever seen. And I always tell people this is Jason Wellborn versus Max Maxwell. At the time it was sort of a nothing fight. It was sort of an up and coming fight for Wellborn, but it was just 2 guys going absolutely mental for 10 rounds. But because neither man would sell a lot of tickets. If they were being put on like a Matchroom bill, there's the Birmingham bill that's come into Matchroom at the NEC. There are kids on there who will sell hundreds of tickets and they'll fight at 6 p.m. off TV. Unfortunately, there just isn't the setup in this country because Sky don't invest. Sky pay Thierry Henry's salary is double the Sky's budget. And that's the problem. There's just not enough investment in it for the likes of Eddie Hearn to be willing to take a risk on international fights.
But isn't the response to that to be, okay, there aren't enough customers, so we need to create more customers? Do you know what I mean? Not double down on the existing ones and just... I just think they're going at it... maybe I'm being really idealistic, but I think the response should be to go out and try and make new customers, get teenagers to watch it. So when they're flicking through TV on a Saturday night and they go to the boxing, they don't look at the names and think, okay, I don't recognise them. They think, actually, I watched the boxing the other week and it was a really good fight. I'm gonna stick and watch this, rather than thinking, oh, it's not Joshua, I'm not interested. And I feel like all Sky do is double down and rip off the existing customers more and more and more and more, and they just kind of they just repeatedly kind of.
Well, no, it's not Sky. So it's the Eddie Hearn. The Eddie Hearn business model is repetitive. He does pretty much the same thing with every single fighter. His way of building fights. The amount of times we see an undercard when there's 3 or 4 guys who are in knockover fights just to keep them busy. He keeps a very, very similar model. It obviously works profit-wise for him, and Sky are happy with the content they're being given. And then when eventually he pulls the big fight, he puts them onto pay-per-view. He builds individuals and guys who can speak English, guys who, he can get them involved with the social media side of stuff to really sort of push that person. He pushes the personality as much as the fighter. And I think they struggle to do that with international opponents. And I think that there's, as much as we like to think there aren't enough boxing fans in the country. Like, for example, right, so football, I know it's a completely different thing, but I watch a lot of La Liga, and I watched, when the MLS was on Sky, I watched a bit of that and Sky could afford to put stuff like that on because they know that there are enough people who watch the main product that they'd also want to try something different. The people that will watch Premier League will probably give a La Liga game a go. They'll probably give a Dutch division game a go.
There are hundreds of football fans, or thousands, who will watch football every single night of the week if it's on. Yeah, right.
Exactly. Whereas, like I said, boxing, there just isn't that core number there. And when they talk these mega figures...
The answer to that to try and create new fans, though. Surely that's the answer, to try and get new fans in. And in my view, the best way to get new fans in is to put on good fights, rather than kind of hype nonsense. Do you know what I mean? I don't know. Maybe I'm being really idealistic, but because DiBella kept saying the way to get the younger fans in and to get dads to sit down with their kids and turn those kids into boxing fans was to just put on great fights consistently. And he didn't. And he said I was really opposed to the name culture that Roy Jones kind of epitomised in the mid-90s. And he said I was. I feel like we're going that way, and I just think we could. Hearn could be doing so much more with the platform.
Do you not think that what he's done with Fight Pass then has obviously taken care of that? Fight Pass After Dark.
Fight Pass has
Steve Goodwin.
Alex's family fans for life. I think his kid will grow up with his.
It's an idealistic view, mate, and like I said, it'd be great if it could, but unfortunately, it's not going to change in the near time. It's just not going to change because there just aren't enough. I think the sport, to grow a sport, so darts, has got to the point where darts is now absolutely massive. Now, boxing could get to that level, or it could get close. Pay-per-view, for me, is what always holds it back, but we won't get into that discussion. But boxing could get close, but it's going to take quite a bit of time. I think we're a long way away yet from having, in that sort of a model. But it's not saying it's impossible, but America has that framework. It has, like you said there, with the Mexican, Puerto Rican, a lot of people, look at the fights in Chicago. Why can they put those on? Because there's so many Polish people who live in Chicago who will turn out and watch.
With 15,000 people to come and watch. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah, exactly. So that's what they have that we don't. I think Sky's priority really should be about the quality of their standardised shows. Their pay-per-view shows generally are pretty good. We don't really knock them too much. It's the quality of the Eubank Jetters. It's those type of fights that they need to improve a lot on this year. Yeah. And I think that, even I think Warrington's fight that was announced today, that's a decent fight. The signs are looking good, but we'll obviously have to see how it goes on.
Sorry guys, we will wrap this up in a sec, and you can jump in whenever. But you really, I'd love to think that Hearn would have looked at something like Eubank Jetta and realised, okay, this is just wrong. I can't be doing this again, and would have thought, okay, I've got to, I can't scrape the bottom of the barrel quite as much as that. And even he, that was the one fight where I think he actually apologised afterwards, didn't he, and said like, yeah, that was shit. Sorry about that. And you'd like to think he'll learn his lesson from stuff, but I can never be too sceptical with Hearn. Just don't trust him an inch about anything. But yeah, has anyone else got any thoughts about it, whether it would work or not?
I feel the same as Paul. I think it'd be nice if it did, but it never will, because the fans in this country just won't get behind foreign guys. They just won't do it. Even if it is good fights, they just won't. If it's the football mentality, they support their own guys, and that's that.
I think what's really depressing about it is, and I was thinking about this the other day, if in, let's say, 10 years, I've got a son and I want to try and get him into boxing, the fights I'll show him will all be from 20 years ago, 30 years ago, and I won't show him any stuff from the last few years. And that's, and he'll probably say, well, what about the stuff that's going on now? And I'll be like, yeah, it's crap, don't bother with it. And he'll probably never get into the sport as a result. It just seems like we're just not doing anything to grow the fan base. It's just such a short-sighted view, in my opinion. But yeah, again, I'm being idealistic, and I know Alex hates that, right?
You carry on, mate.
No. Have you got anything to add before we wrap it up?
I just think we're on this. No, not really. You've all covered it pretty well.
All right, they've both jumped off. So. Okay, everyone, cheers for listening. And we rambled a little bit, but we have to ramble when there's no fights taking place. But is there anything this weekend at all? I haven't even checked the schedule.
Sturm versus
Chudenov
2, the rematch that everyone's been waiting for.
Yeah, when Chudenov won 10 rounds of the first one. Yeah, that'll be great, and I'm sure that'll have a stacked undercard in Germany. But anyway, thanks.
Always a stacked undercard.
Yeah, well, cheers for listening, everyone, and we'll be back soon.
Bye.
Cheers, mate.